It was delivered.
Reinforcement of her perceived legitimacy.
It doesn't matter if there was calculated how to use them.
Joan of Arc, that old charlatan.
Well, that's not quite how the book describes her.
In the time period of medieval Europe, the societies were saturated with apocalyptic warnings, miracle stories, and visions. One of the more widely circulating prophecies of the 14th century was, in short, that a young maiden from Lorraine would help restore France. Remind you of anyone? From a young age, little Joni reported receiving visions from saints who told her to live piously, attend church, and support France. Over time, these visions became less personal and more political. That bit about supporting France became an order to actively seek out and support the heir Charles as king. So the woman didn't go blathering all about town about her latest text message from St. Michael. Accompanied by a small escort of men for the journey, Joan traveled to the royal court in Chinon to see the Dolphin.
Dolphin?
The Dolphin, Charles VII, better known as Charlie Vickers, was notoriously paranoid about being recognized as a high-ranking figure in feudal monarchy. When Joan arrived in Chinon, Charles was highly skeptical and decided to test her. He dressed in plain clothes and hid among the crowd of courtiers, while one of his noblemen sat on the throne dressed in royal finery. Despite never having seen him before, Joan bypassed the decoy entirely. She walked straight up to the real Charles, curtsied, and looked him dead in the eyes. She dismissed his crude deception and chastised him, famously saying, "I know a dolphin when I see one." Both Charlie Vickers and his supporters were impressed that she identified him. With Charles' claim to the throne still in public debate, and having only just met Joan, his advisors suggested that she be judged for purity. Not an uncommon practice for women claiming divine guidance, since it was generally believed that only virgins could receive direct spiritual communication. And it was decided rather quickly, as she wasn't much of a looker. When the royal court authorized Joan both court and military access, she was issued a horse, weapons, and even custom armor. She'd already ditched the peasant dresses for men's clothing and cropped her hair to a short pageboy style. Her new look was met with, well, let's just say mixed results. Naturally, these added an air of authority. She wasn't merely being allowed to speak, she was being outfitted. The girl had her script down, her image polished, those helped. But the two final accessories really needed to complete the look. Despite being offered a matching sword, that Charles had really brought out the blue in her eyes, she refused, since honestly it was a bit tacky. She told them to search inside the church for a sword.
I heard they uncovered some kind of legendary blade.
Well, not as miraculous as it might seem, but regardless, Joan now had a holy weapon tied to permission, not just conquest. And although she didn't use it for a battlefield weapon, she used it for something far more dangerous. Reinforcement of her perceived legitimacy. But the diva just had to go one step further. Joni commissioned a custom bespoke white banner. Now there's a woman who understood good branding. But it wasn't all about playing dress-up for some medieval music video. There was a battle to be won. The Siege of Orléans. Oh, I remember it like it was only 300 years ago. This event was a major turning point in the 101 Years' War. For months, the city of Orleans had been under siege by England. If it fell, it would have severely crippled Charlie's claim to the throne. But on a mission from God, she wasn't going to let that happen. While not a formal commander of the French military, Joan participated in assaults on English fortifications and was a highly encouraging presence for troop morale. Not afraid to get her hands dirty, she was frequently on the front lines during the siege and increasingly pushed for more aggressive action. Quite the little sadist when she came out of her shell. Despite taking a near-fatal arrow, mere hours later she returned to the battlefield with banner held high. And just when the assault showed signs of stopping, her re-emergence ignited flames in the hearts of men, if you believe that sort of thing. The French captured the fortification, and the English, entirely abandoned the siege like the cowardly dogs they are. It became increasingly difficult to ignore this connection, this Maid prophecy unfolding in real time. That battle proved to be far more than just one victory. It was basically clear confirmation that Joan's mission, and by extension Charles' cause, had genuine legitimacy. Oh, that little plan worked brilliantly.
Plan?
The battle plans, of course. You don't just jump into a siege with no strategy, you know. Keep out.
Impressive.
More than you might think.
You said the battle was more than just one victory.
And with good reason. With that victory secure, Charles was officially crowned as king. And now, with that out of the way, let's give a hit to the good stuff. When Joan wrapped up her photo shoot at Charlie's coronation, the Maid flash era went into full effect. Very much the Britney Spears of the 1400s. Love her or hate her, you just couldn't escape her. And honestly, what was not to love? Oh, it was glorious. What a time to be alive. And why the maid could barely stroll into town to buy a new broom without crowds queuing up for an autograph. The divination sensation was sweeping the nation. While Charlie Boy seized the kingdom's reins, the maid was pulling the strings on the battlefield like a virtuoso violinist. Believe it or not, the royal court actually began distancing themselves from her. Charles too. King of France. King of France by foot. King of backseat driving. Rides the maid hype train all the way to Coronation-Station, and the moment the man gets the crown, he suddenly thinks he's the star. Typical. Joan insisted on continuing campaigns. Her whistle-stop tour de force through France was unstoppable. 1429, the maid and the military made for Paris. Though admittedly, this is where things get complicated. During the failed strike on Paris, some fool struck the Iron Maiden with a crossbow bolt. As if that trick would work a second time. Even injured, she continued fighting. Not just enemies, but her own men. She had to be forcibly removed from battle as it raged on into the night. From local peasant to living legend, the failed Paris assault wasn't about to stop her. Though the court, they tried. Intimidated by her star power, the court of the Dolphin-King stopped answering her letters or lending her aid. While they closed their greedy palms, virtuous to the very end, Joan was always willing to lend a helping hand to those in need. So when the besieged town of Compiègne cried out for assistance in 1430, who do you think was there? Not a dolphin or shark in sight. Joan triumphantly strode up to the city gates, a sword in one hand and a Bible in the other. Gritty teeth, she snarled at the Burgundians, walk into the light, or I will drag you into it.
Burgundians?
Yes. A franchise from faction with flexible allegiances, so named for their disastrous color-coordinated fashion sense. The treacherous curse. When the bloodlust and blistering heat of battle, the beast threw over on a horse, and in the ensuing chaos and confusion, the maiden was captured. Captured and put on trial, if you can call it that. Overseen largely by English allied Bishop Pierre Cochon, the trial went on for months. She was interrogated on everything from her spiritual visions to her fashion sense. Although the judges repeatedly tried to trap her with trick questions, her responses were remarkably sophisticated for an illiterate with no formal education.
What do you mean by trick questions?
Oh yes! When she was asked, "Do you know whether or not you are in God's grace?" If she said no, it would undermine any claims of a divine mission. And if she said yes, she risked heresy by claiming to know God's own mind. She responded, "If I am not, may God put me there. And if I am, may God so keep me." More slippery than a lubed-up twink at an orgy, Joanie.
I'm sorry?
No need to apologize, but if you'd stop interrupting, maybe we could get back to the trial of the century. At one point, when she was asked aggressively about the certainty of her divine visions, she famously replied, "I am a woman more sinned against than sinning." And the interrogators quickly grew tired of her doublespeak. What if they were going to play games with her? She was going to play them right back.
Sounds like she could just talk her way out of it.
No, she couldn't. It didn't matter what she said.
LilScrappy, we can take a break if...
No, indeed, Joan a break. They moved her from castle to military prison to private interrogations. She was constantly in chains. She even asked for messages to be sent to the Pope. They didn't care. They only cared about what she said as long as they could frame it for their version of events.
So they were trying to see if her visions were genuine?
It doesn't matter if they were real. It's how she used them.
Or how they were used against her.
Yes.
That was hardly a trial.
Precisely. The nature of these matters is more nuanced than they might appear. Consider the optics. The church needed the matter settled, but they could not be seen as the ones to do it. So, deemed guilty, they transferred her to English custody.
Seems slimy.
Oh, slow, but you get there eventually. It's worse than you'd think. Under threat of death, she signed the confession and is immediately thrown back in prison. But a day or two later, she staunchly recants that confession. She willingly affirms that she heard voices and visions and resumes her usual male apparel.
They give her back her own clothes?
Well, it wasn't because she was a bit chilly. It was deliberate. Even without recanting, if she wore them after the trial agreement not to, she could be branded a relapsed heretic, and they'd have all the legal justification required to execute her. It was calculated. On May 30th, 1431, English authorities walked Joan out onto the market square of Rouen to be burned alive. While the presence of clerics provided legitimacy to the event, this was not a private affair. The combination of theologians, secular officials, and public onlookers is one of the reasons this part of her life is so well documented today.
And so anyone who saw it became part of it.
No. Well, yes, technically. What I mean is, not everyone was there to watch a 19-year-old girl get burned alive. It wasn't exactly fun for the whole family kind of entertainment.
That's not what I meant.
When I said it was calculated, I meant it. It wasn't just about killing her, you know. By deliberately making it a public spectacle, they visibly crippled her message, and of course, by exposing Joan as a fraud, they also undermined Charles' legitimacy. 2 stones, 1 bird, extra crispy.
LilScrappy.
Well, if you want a sugar-coated version, I suggest you look elsewhere. Onlookers' reactions were a mix of awe, tears, and a general somber tone. Some reports claim she died with a smile on her face. And as the flames rose to her Roman nose, the legend of Joan of Arc unfurled like smoke trails across time.
So, that was the end of Joan of Arc?
Oh, you wish! Flash forward some 20-odd years, and Joan's mother, Isabel of Arc, petitioned the church to reopen the trial.
That seems unusual.
Very. On its own, it's unlikely she would have gotten very far. But the political situation had changed by 1450. Charles was more secure as king. However, since much of his rise and coronation had been tied to a heretic witch, the matter didn't exactly look good for the French crown.
So he helped her?
Only when it suited him. Did he try to ransom her when captured? No. Did he even attend her execution? No. Did he even send her mother a condolence card?
Not so much as a post-holiday clearance Christmas card, you cheapskate.
Long after the Nullification, and by the 19th century, Joan's image became increasingly venerated. Pope Benedict officially canonized Joan of Arc as a saint. Though it took her hundreds of years, she eventually became one of those saints.
Wait, are you saying that she aimed for sainthood? Like she planned all of that?
Wait, I have to spell everything out for you.